What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Open Great League once again, and the team that we're going to be taking a look at today is Mandibuzz, Galarian Slowking, and Shadow Quagsire. Now, Mandibuzz and Quagsire, we've seen both of them in the meta before. We're not going to worry about them today. What we're focused on today is Galarian Slowking and a potential new series on this channel called Under the Radar. This is a Pokemon that has flown completely under the radar, got a buff in this season, but absolutely no one is talking about it, and I couldn't figure out why. It has a really decent moveset, it has decent bulk, and it's got pretty unique typing, so I wanted to take a look at it today. But before we do, a special thank you to the expert trainer members on this channel, Benny Hemlock, Dr. Green Mustache, and Soham Patil, as well as the legend trainer members on this channel, Big Burden, Andrew Pitton, Musachu, Noodleman, and Speedster. Well, without further ado, let's hop into some battles. So we're putting Mandibuzz on the lead to cover a lot of Slowking's weaknesses. However, Slowking is the safe swap in most cases on this team, but Quagsire can function as a safe swap as well. But the reason we're running Mandibuzz on the lead is for this exact Pokemon. It is on the lead so many times every single day, and its charge moves are completely walled here. So while yes, they can boost their attack with Trail Blaze, unfortunately their charge moves are all resisted. So I should have gone for a Dark Pulse and then into an Aerial Ace just to win the zeros, but instead I end up overfarming by 1, playing to a CMP tie that I'd lose, and then my opponent can shield that up and then fully farm me down. So yes, but they do win switch, but at the cost of a shield. Now it's about what is in the back. A Blastoise come in, but this Blastoise is on Water Gun, so I can actually overfarm here, play to the CMP tie with the Hydro Cannon, and they will be met with a Stone Edge. They're going to let that connect. I'm going to shield this up, may as well match shields. I still don't know what's in the back. And now I can just overfarm as much as I possibly can, go for the knockout with the Aqua Tail. I believe they are in Aqua Tail range, even though it is resisted, and they are. That picks up the knockout. What's in the back? It's a Dusk Noir. Now, Dusk Noir is actually pretty tricky because while yes, I can get to a Stone Edge, and this will do massive neutral damage, they can live that, and I have no fast move pressure in the back. However, I'm forced to come in here. I have to take one charge move because they're at the back-to-back charge moves, and suddenly this is a pretty difficult situation to be in. I have to kind of commit to the farm down. I can't throw energy because a 2-turn versus a 3-turn will always register first. So my opponent is forced to throw energy and hope that I'm at 1 HP, but I'm not. The mud shot goes through and we're still able to take that win. Into the next match, Go Lurk. This is a fantastic lead and against a subscriber, Simon, and he comes in with a Fortress, and unfortunately this team is actually triple weak to Fortress. I haven't seen many Fortress recently. However, I'm going to chip with a Dark Pulse and then come in with my Quagsire. I've played against this team again. I know what I would do in the future. I'm still going to no shield that first, and connecting with the Dark Pulse first is fine as well because they are forced to go for Sand Tombs in this matchup. Most are on Sand Tomb as opposed to Earthquake. However, I'm always going to farm up to the Stone Edge and bait with the Aqua Tail because at worst they let that go and I Mud Shot farm them down, or I'm forced to throw a second Aqua Tail, whereas in this situation they can actually flip switch here, and flipping switch is a nightmare because a poison on a steel is terrible, and you know what's even worse than a poison on a steel is a Mandibuzz on a Carving. So at this point the game is already over. I decided I would play it out because it is against a subscriber, and I figured, you know what, I'll play it out. But there's basically no longer a win con. He flipped like switch in this matchup, which was incredibly important for him. That is absolutely what he needed. I am going to get to 2 more charge moves here, so I'm going to settle for double Aerial Ace as opposed to 1 Dark Pulse, which is nice. Like, this is some okay chip, but it doesn't really matter in the end because yes, I do have super effective coverage with Slowking against the Go Lurk, but as long as he pivots fast enough before I get there, I'm going to take too many Mud Slaps and then the game is over because he's already at the back-to-back Power Gems. In comes the Go Lurk. I probably should have thrown right there, but I don't think a Surf KOs from full HP. It does just barely when you're below full HP, but he's close to a Sand Tomb here on the Fortress as well, and yeah, I'm forced to let this go. Even if I got the catch here of the Rock Tomb, we'd still be in a tricky situation because I'd have to throw energy, and then his Carving would come back with energy. So as soon as he flipped switch, that game was over. So well played to Simon. Into the next match, we've got a Typhlosion, a Shadow Typhlosion at that. Shadow Typhlosion, of course, has super effective Thunder Punch in this matchup, but they are over farming, trying to throw in good timing. So I'm going to go for a charge move first, and I'm going to bait with an Aerial Ace. What that does is that actually allows me to get to a Dark Pulse, and then my opponent, unless they're willing to commit 2 shields right away, they're not going to get, like, I'm going to put them deep into the red and grab a shield before they can even pick up the knockout. And guess what? I'm going to get to another charge move unless they throw their energy. So yes, while I believe they are at the back-to-back Thunder Punches here, that's not a problem. I can just come in with my Quagsire. I can no shield this. It's resisted damage, single resisted at that, but we do get the farm down. And now what's in the back? It is an Azumarill. So because I have super effective acids in the back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a Stone Edge first, and then I'm going to go for a Play Rough catch onto my Slowking. Are we successful? No, we're not, but we have put them in acid farm down range, and what's in the back? It's a Diggersby. So this is going to be a very difficult matchup to play out of because obviously Acid and Shadow Ball are resisted, so I'm forced to go for Surf here. And unfortunately for Slowking, one thing that really does hold it back is that both of its charge moves are non-stab, and you're going to see that come into play here. I'm going to play to the CMP tie, going for the second Surf as late as possible, but still 2 Surfs plus all of the acids to get there are not enough to KO a Diggersby. And that's probably this Pokemon's biggest drawback. That said, they come back in with a Azumarill. I can live in Ice Beam. They end up going for a Play Rough for some reason, maybe anticipating a catch on my Quagsire, but no catch was there. We were going to win that matchup either way, but we are able to take the win. Into the next match, another Scizor. So definitely just going to play this one out. And at this point, I decide I'm going to go for double Aerial Ace because 1 Dark Pulse plus the farm down isn't really viable. They can just bullet punch farm me down with Trailblazes before I get there. So there's Aerial Ace number 1. I can live that. Here comes the Trailblaze from my opponent. No, they're going to Night Slash, hoping for the 2x boost, but they do not get it. Here comes another Aerial Ace. They are going to commit the shield, but now I'm on my 3 cycles, so I can just go for another Aerial Ace. But I think at this point they are at the back-to-back charge moves, or one away from it. Yeah, they are at the back-to-back. So they are going to throw, they've already committed a shield, so very similar to the first matchup, committing the 1 shield in order to win switch, but that's fine because bullet punches are resistant on Quagsire. I get the full Mudshot farm down, and it's another Azumarill in the back. This time I come in with my Slowking right away, and it's a Bastiodon this time instead of a Diggersby. So unfortunately, Slowking never getting the alignment that it wants in these matchups, but this is where having Surf coverage is really nice because yes, acids are triple resisted in this matchup, but having Surf where it's super effective is really nice. And it looks like it's actually going to take more than 3 to pick up the knockout here. So I think realistically, I need to catch out of this matchup. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to overfarm here, go for the Surf. At this point, they are 1 Smackdown away from another Stone Edge. So I'm going to throw 1 Acid, go for the catch. That's the only point my opponent would be able to outpace, which is why they had to throw right there. We get the catch, Stone Edge or Flamethrower, both resisted. Back in comes the Azumarill, and Azumarill kind of has to overfarm in this matchup in order to come out with energy to threaten my Slowking because they know I have some residuals. So they're overfarming, but they overfarm by a little bit too much, allowing me to make it to a second Stone Edge, and this is going to do massive chip damage, puts them into the red health. At this point, they are at nearly 100 energy, or are at 100 energy, but I can just let this go. I can shield up any charge move here if they get there, but they do not. Azumarill cannot hold back-to-back moves, and just like that, we are able to take the win. Annihilate on the lead in the next match. This is once again a pretty good lead. They end up switching into a Drapion, and they throw right away, which means this can only be an Aqua Tail. Maybe they saw the ground typing and just kind of panicked and threw as soon as they could. However, I'm going to now build up to the Stone Edge. I'm actually going to full send the Stone Edge, not expecting my opponent to shield. They do let that go, and that does put them in Mudshot farm down range. That Mudshot will go through, but I can live a crunch from a non-Shadow Drapion, so I will let it through as well. I don't need to commit a shield in this matchup in order to win switch. Are they going to come back in with the Annihilate? If they are, they're going to be met with an Aqua Tail, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. Aqua Tail will connect. This will do some solid chip, and it'll probably put in an Aerial Ace range for the Manabuzz later in the match. Back in comes the Manabuzz. We will be able to outpace here because my opponent only got 2 counters worth of energy against my Quagsire. So here we go. Here comes the aerial ace. My opponent does commit the shield, and the fact they're staying in this matchup tells me they're either going for an ice punch or a close combat. So I will commit the shield right back. It is the close combat, and now it's about what is in the back. They end up going for a catch. It's a Furret, and I just U-switch, I-switch into my Slowking, which is actually really bad because Sucker Punch is super effective here, and obviously Swifts are neutral. I'm only going to get to one charge move, and Shadow Ball is double resisted, so I'm forced to go for Surf, but fortunately Mana Buzz is still in a really good position. I believe, once again, they are in potentially double aerial ace range, and I also don't want them to catch a Dark Pulse onto their Annihilate. So I'm going to go straight aerial ace in this matchup. I'm going to see how much damage this does and if I can two-shot the Furret with it. It looks like just barely with some snarls I might be able to. I kind of have to let this go because the Annihilate has the potential to make another charge move. So I'll let the second Swift go. They end up coming back in with the Annihilate, but Annihilate will instantly be met with the aerial ace. That picks up the knockout. Here comes a Dark Pulse now, may as well. We're able to outpace. It's a harder hitting stab move. Dark Pulse will pick up the knockout on the Furret, and thanks to Mana Buzz, we are able to take that win. Into the next match, Mana Buzz into Marowak. This is a fantastic lead. My opponent is going to safe switch into a Drapion, and Drapion is actually going to be chipped with a Aerial Ace before I come in with my Quagsire here. Now, I think you probably should just pivot into your Quagsire quicker than this, because you pace very similarly to the Drapion, except you can take one charge move, whereas they can't really. However, they are going to go for the crunch. Now here comes an Aqua Tail. This is only neutral damage, but it would take them out from this range. And at this point, they're nearly at the back-to-back charge move. So I have a decision to make. And my decision is I want switch. So you know what? I'm just going to commit to the full farm down. I'm going to double shield. I've grabbed one shield from my opponent. So being at a single shield deficit isn't as bad. As opposed to like a 0 to 2 shield scenario. But winning switch is really important because now I can have my Mana Buzz where I want it. That said, they end up coming in with a Feraligatr, and Quagsire doesn't really have a whole lot of play in this matchup. So I chip with the Stone Edge, they let that go, and then I instantly pivot into my Mana Buzz because I know what's on the lead. And now I'm able to outpace the Feraligatr to an Ice Beam by getting to an Aerial Ace there. They end up committing the shield, but that's fine because I can live an Ice Beam no problem. Back in comes the Marowak. Once again, I can outpace. Their fast moves are double resisted here, so I can throw the Dark Pulse. It looks like 2 of those will be enough to pick up the knockout, so my opponent is forced to go for a Rock Slide here in order to pick up the knockout. Even a Bone Club would not pick up the knockout. They end up going for the Bone Club, trying to save energy, but Trainer that is double resisted. Here comes a Dark Pulse. That puts them into the red health. Back in comes the Quagsire. We get the simultaneous KO, and Feraligatr with no energy is going to get Acid Farm down, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, Regidrago. Now this is a pretty neutral lead, but Regidrago is very neutrally strong with the combination of its hard-hitting nuke and breaking swipe. Dragon Energy, of course, does a lot of damage and has the potential to, I believe, lower your defense. Is that it? I don't remember. Maybe we'll find out right here. Nope, it does not come through. That said, I'm going to overfarm, go for the Dark Pulse. I end up overfarming by one too many, playing to a CMP tie that I do not win, and now they can pick up the knockout with their breaking swipe before I even throw my energy. Now in comes Slowking, and it's a Metang in the back. Now Metang is a good answer to the Fairy and Ice weakness of Regidrago on the lead. However, Slowking can get to a Shadow Ball that hits for massive super effective damage. I'm going to correctly shield up a return, which is massive because that means they're not going to get to a second charge move. I get the full farm down. Back in comes the Regidrago. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm now going to overfarm by only 5 Mud Shots, pick up the knockout with the Stone Edge, and now it's about what's in the back, and it is a Scizor, and my opponent has committed 2 shields to this Scizor, but Bullet Punch is resisted, so all I have to do is make it to 3 Aqua Tails, and I need them to throw some energy elsewhere other than my Quagsire. So I'm going to instantly pivot after grabbing 2 shields from my opponent into the Slowking, force them to throw this Night Slash, and now I should be able to get to my Aqua Tail at the same time they get to the back-to-back Night Slashes, and it looks like that is the case, but wait. Did we get one turn lagged when we came back in? That should have been a CMP tie. Was it a CMP tie? It wasn't. My opponent is able to throw back-to-back moves because we get one turn lag. Scopely, fix your game. That is unbelievable that we lose that game when we should have won. Into the next match, Neutral lead, I'd say neutral, but it's slightly positive to the Mana Buzz. They end up safe switching into a Tentacruel, and we have a very dominant answer here in Quagsire because we can live any one charge move. My opponent actually full sends the Blizzard, trying to go for the knockout blow, but that allows me to overfarm pretty significantly here and now go for the Stone Edge to pick up the knockout on the Tentacruel. Of course, ooh, it actually doesn't quite. They live it on like 1 HP, so I'm actually forced to commit the shield, but I'm fine with doing that because winning switch is nice when I can come out with a Stone Edge to threaten the Jump Bluff anyways. So back in comes the Jump Bluff. Now I can connect with a Stone Edge. This is massive super effective damage from a Shadow Quagsire. It lands, in comes the Mana Buzz, and it's a Greninja in the back. So good thing that we pivoted because our Slowking absolutely does not want to see Greninja. We are completely walled there. Both of our charge moves are resisted. So having Mana Buzz kind of clean up this Greninja, even though it's not a great matchup for the Mana Buzz, especially because we're on Snarl, is still better than Slowking, and Slowking can kind of deal with Jump Bluff because of Acid. That said, my opponent has a huge pacing advantage in this matchup, and they hit quite a bit harder, but we have the bulk advantage, and bulk is king in the Go Battle League. Everyone knows it. They have to go for a Hydro in order to pick up the knockout here. Are they going to go for the Hydro? They are. It does pick up the knockout. In comes the Slowking now. Can we get the full Acid farm down before my opponent is able to make it to 3 Night Slashes? Here comes the first one. They end up going for the harder hitting Hydro Cannon instead, even though Night Slash is super effective. But I'm sure this is no, it's not. It's another Hydro. Very odd. In comes the Jump Bluff. They're going to get outpaced here, making it to the Shadow Ball. Now the question is, can we get the Acid farm down before they make it to a 3rd charge move? And the answer is no. They're going to make it to another. But the good thing about Quagsire is that it has a 2-turn move versus my opponent's 3-turn move. And yeah, that picks up the knockout, and we are able to take the win. Into next match, once again, Mana Buzz into Scizor. So this is a good lead. My opponent safe switches into Credilli, and unfortunately, this is a team that is triple weak to Acid Credilli as well. But that's okay. We can chip with a Dark Pulse, and now in comes Slowking. Slowking can take 1 charge move. You're going to get to see the bulk here of Slowking. It's got some pretty decent bulk. It lives that in the green. And then I'm going to farm up, go for the Shadow Ball on the CMP tie with my opponent's 2nd charge move. And my opponent, even though you don't see the animation, commits the shield. So I'm going to commit the shield right back. There's not really a way my opponent can ever outpace. So as long as I'm always throwing the Shadow Ball as late as possible on the CMP tie to pick up the knockout, then we're always going to be in a good situation. So here comes another Shadow Ball. My opponent actually lives that from like red HP, which is insane. I didn't think they were yellow, but still, that's insane. That is unfortunately one of the, I've talked about it already, one of the weaknesses of not having stab charge moves. But we come in with the Quagsire, that way we can outpace the Scizor when they come back in. By getting the Mudshot farm down, we have a slight energy lead. They end up letting that go. I'm going to go for a Trailblaze catch onto my Mana Buzz. I'm unsuccessful, and it's an Azumarill in the back. And unfortunately, flipping switch for my opponent meant absolutely everything for them, because having Azumarill on Mana Buzz and Scizor on my Quagsire is basically endgame for me. As soon as I commit this shield in this matchup, the game is over. So I'm forced to make a decision, and that decision is I have to let this go. I basically need to knock out the Quagsire, or sorry, with the Azumarill with my Quagsire, as well as their Scizor with the Mudshots following. So I'm going to farm up. I'm at back-to-back aerial aces, so I'm going to throw both of these. This will do some solid chip, and if my opponent expects a snipe, they might throw right away. And that's exactly what my opponent's going to do. However, I did not go for it. I don't even think I had a charge move loaded on my Quagsire. I did not. So now they're at another charge move. I'm forced to just let this go. I know they have a Trailblaze on their Scizor. They realize that, so they go for the harder hitting Play Rough. But now I'm at the back-to-back Aqua Tails before my opponent makes it to another charge move, which is massive because now I can go for the back-to-back moves. This will be enough to pick up the knockout, even though it's resisted on the bulky Azumarill. And now it's Mudshot versus resisted Bullet Punch. We get the Mudshot farm down, and we are able to take the win. Mana Buzz into Jellicent, another good lead. I guess you can see why Mana Buzz is ranked 9 in the Great League, but they end up safe switching into a Tentacruel, a lot more Tentacruels than I would have expected. Maybe everyone is just hunting Azumarill because Azumarill is everywhere, but they end up going for a Scald. It's not enough to pick up the knockout, and once again, we know from that previous matchup that a Stone Edge is actually not enough to pick up the knockout here, which is a little bit unfortunate, but my opponent actually commits the shield, which means it actually might be now, because with extra Mudshots, it might put them in Stone Edge range. My opponent goes for the Scald, maybe hoping for that debuff, but no debuff comes through. Here comes another Stone Edge. They can't live this from this range. My opponent actually commits 2 shields in this matchup. They really want to flip switch, so I am definitely not going to let them because they clearly have an answer to Mandibuzz in the back. I'm going to just go for the Stone Edge, even though Aqua Tail would be more than enough to pick up the knockout from this range. Stone Edge most certainly will. Back in comes the Jellicent. Can I make it to an Aqua Tail? No, I will get KO'd. Back in comes the Mandibuzz, and it is a Morpeko in the back. So now we see why my opponent was fighting for switch so hard. And unfortunately for me, I'm kind of core broken by Morpeko. Can we live an Aura Wheel? We can. We live it in the red health range. Can we also make it to a Surf? And it looks like the answer is yes. Now the question is, if my opponent gets a full farm down, this could get a little bit risky, but it's going to be a race. Acid versus Thundershock. We get the simultaneous KO, and in the zero shield scenario, Mandibuzz against Jellicent, we would take that win, so my opponent just resigns the match. Into the next match, we've got Mandibuzz into Jumpluff. They end up safe switching into a Feraligatr. So you know what? I'm actually just going to stay in this matchup. I don't have a great answer to Feraligatr in the back, especially down energy. So Mandibuzz resisting the Shadow Claws is not a bad matchup here. I connect with a Dark Pulse. That puts them already in the yellow health range, and now I can just start spamming out these Aerial Aces because Aerial Ace from this range will be enough to pick up the knockout. My opponent ends up committing the shield, but I'm already at another Aerial Ace. So here comes Aerial Ace number 2. Is my opponent willing to commit 2 shields in this matchup? They are. That is actually crazy. And at this point, I'm like, I could fight for switch if they want it that bad, but a 2 shield advantage is pretty hard to give up. So I'm just going to come in with my Quagsire here. I don't need health on my Quagsire because I know they have a Jumpluff. What I need is an energy lead because coming out with a Stone Edge would be absolutely massive. So I'm going to take the Hydro, get the full farm down with my Quagsire. I'm going to overfarm here looking for the catch. My opponent ends up going for the Stone Edge catch onto a Quagsire of their own, but I don't have a good answer to Quagsire in the back. I've got a Slowking, which is weak to ground, so I'm forced to stay in this matchup, start spamming out these Aqua Tails, and if my opponent doesn't throw and overfarms too much, I'm going to get to another Aqua Tail, and I believe that was a CMP tie. It's very rare that my Quagsire wins CMP, but we do in this matchup, and now in comes Slowking with a 2 shield advantage. This is basically unlosable. Even if my opponent double Aerial Ace baits me and then goes for the Acrobatics, I don't think I can lose this game because 1 Acrobatics is not enough to pick up the knockout. Here comes a Shadow Ball now. This is neutral damage, and we throw it on the CMP tie. It puts them into the red health, and I believe that's probably pretty much Acid farm down range. However, I will commit the shield. Another Acrobatics come through. They might be on double nuke because that's when they're farming up to every single time. But here comes a Shadow Ball. This will be enough to pick up the knockout, and we are able to take that final win. But yeah, Galarian Slowking totally fell under the radar for I think a lot of people, and that's kind of why I wanted to showcase it on this channel. It had a lot more play than I would have expected, and it was a lot of fun to play. Would I recommend it for climbing? Not really. I think its rank, I think it's totally underranked for what it's worth. I believe it's in like the 400 range, which I think is a little ridiculous with a moveset and decent bulk and kind of odd but okay typing. I think it is totally underrated. That said, I don't think it's like a top 100 Pokemon. I think it's probably maybe, I don't know, 150 to 250 range. It's definitely better than it gives on. It's got a decent bait move in Surf. Shadow Ball is a great charge move. Like I said multiple times throughout this video, the biggest issue for this Pokemon is that its charge moves are non-stab, and having non-stab charge moves means they do not hit that much. They just don't hit that hard. If you're unfamiliar with what stab means, it basically just means that if it's short for same type attack bonus. So in Pokemon Go, you get or maybe even the Pokemon franchise, I'm not sure, you get a 20% attack boost if the charge move or fast move that you're using is the same typing as you are as a Pokemon. So Poison and Psychic fast and charge moves get a 20% attack boost on Slowking. We only have Acid, so Acid does get that boost, but Shadow Ball and Surf do not. So a little bit of an issue there. And then of course, you know, that 1-turn lag ended up costing me that game, which is pretty unfortunate. I think the Niantic / Scopely software engineers just never graduated from kindergarten, so unfortunately that's what we're stuck with. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.